it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here for a PB&J card class, and today I'll be creating a fun card featuring our new miniature 3x4-inch transparent set called Love You. And I feel like this little girl is just happiness in a stamp. She's such fun to color, and I'm so excited to be sharing this card with you today. So here's a look at all of the supplies I'll be used in creating this card, including the Copic colors that I'll be using to color her in. And I will put both of these supply lists up at the very end of the video up on screen. So if you want to hit pause at that point at the very end, you can look at them in more detail. I started by stamping this image using Memento Tuxedo Black ink onto Neenah Solar White cardstock. I did that in my stamp positioning tool so that I was able to stamp it multiple times and get a really nice dark outline to the image before I began coloring. I am coloring her in using Copic markers, and I'm not doing anything too crazy or complicated with my shading. I am starting with her skin tone and just using a couple colors on there. I like to add it a little bit darker around the outer edges of her face, up around her hairline especially, and then go back and blend that with the lighter color. And I also wanted to give her some really happy red rosy cheeks, which I added in then and blended out with my lightest color. If you have not tried character stamps or critter stamps or real cute type images like this, I really recommend giving it a try. It is just such fun to be coloring such a happy image. And what's great is this is a miniature 3x4-inch set. So if you want to give it a try, it's a great value, and you get just this one image and a fun little sentiment that matches as well. So if you haven't tried any character or critter stamps, this is a great place to start because you can give it a try with just one at a great value. And I think she could be used for so many different cards. You could use her for a Valentine design, birthday, thinking of you, anything that is just a happy occasion, congratulations, or celebrating, because she's just so happy. And her little pillow in the shape of a heart can be Valentine's, but it really can be anytime. Even sending a hug, I think that would be a cute sentiment to use with this image as well. So for her pillow, I am starting with my darkest color, which is what I typically do, not always, but what I typically do. And I'm just focusing on adding that darker color. Any areas where her arms would be sort of grasping that pillow and that would be sort of going underneath her arms, one place up at the top where it's sort of folded behind. And then I will go back and blend that with my medium tone and then my lightest tone. I'm not too concerned about having a light source coming from the right or the left, but more in adding darker colors where any areas are folded or behind another portion of the image. And I also just like to look for variation when I'm coloring with my Copic markers. So areas of light and areas of dark. This stamp is illustrated by Mo Manning for Penny Black, and I really find with any of the stamps that she illustrates for Penny Black, whether you are new to coloring and you're just putting flat layers of color on, just one solid color in each area, or you're doing very complicated shading techniques, it always ends up looking very nice. They're just so beautifully illustrated that no matter your skill level, at least I am very happy with the final results. On her hair, I'm just adding just touches of dark on top of those lighter areas, but don't need to spend too much time on that because not a lot of it actually. There's not really much of it there. And then I did go ahead and fussy cut this image, and don't be scared of that hair when you're fussy cutting. You really don't have to get all of those tiny little tendrils. So now that she's cut out, I did that off camera. I'm ready to make my background. I'll be using the Flower Illuminate, Leaves, and the Triple Love die sentiment. And I'm also going to do a little bit of stamping with our Mosaic pattern stamp. This actually came out in a Christmas release, but it's great for everyday cards, and I'll show you that in just a bit. So I hand trimmed a hill and I'm just lining that up onto my background. I did draw a pencil line so I know where that hill starts and ends on the background, so where I want my areas to be the darkest. I'm inking this Nina Solar White cardstock using Memento Lilac Posies ink. So I'm trying to match this background up to the colors on her dress. And I want it to be darker near the bottom of the card and lighter as it moves up towards the top. So kind of put a light layer all over the top. And now I'm going to go in and really darken things up. I do a heavier pressure down at the bottom and then really lighten up the pressure as I apply this ink as I move towards the top. I am using a jumbo sponge applicator tool. You could also use an ink blending tool with a foam pad. This would be beautiful with distress inks, really whatever type of inks you like to add to your backgrounds. You could also do this from colored cardstock, but personally I like the variation in color I can get by inking it myself. Just decided here to darken up that base just a little bit more so you see more contrast from the light to the dark. And I have sped this up or we would be watching this video all day, but you don't need to work real fast when you're doing your backgrounds. That will help you from getting sort of smudge marks or real spongy marks. Now that color just needed a little bit of toning down. So I'm putting a very, very light layer of Distress ink in the color of Vintage Photo just right over the top of that whole panel. And that is a transparent ink. So when I put it over the top, it just tones down what is beneath it a little bit and matched it up better to her dress. Now I'm going to do that hand trimmed hill and I'll ink that with bamboo leaves. Same style of inking, sort of starting off of the edge and working my way on in a circular motion. Building up the darkness of the color by adding several layers. And the more ink that I have onto that cardstock, the more then I can start adding a heavier pressure. If you start with a real heavy pressure right to begin with, it's hard to blend that out. But once you have some more ink on there, it gives you a little more wiggle room in doing a heavier pressure. I wanted to darken up the edges just a bit, so now I've grabbed the color of Northern Pine. I'm just putting that just sort of the top of the hill and around the very bottom. Checking out how it looks on the background. And then I'm going to use these same colors here on the leaves die cut. I also cut these from Nina's Solar White cardstock. And I find creating these scenes using the adorable new character critter stamps is really a great way to get more use from the dies that I have in my stash. So once I've colored and cut out my focal point image, then I just kind of rummage through my stash of dies and try out different ones in the background until I find something I'm really happy with. And I find it's helpful when I get a new die, I like to cut it several times from white cardstock, and then I store all my dies in envelopes, just basic envelopes, and I put those extra die cuts in the envelope. So when I go to make my cards like this, I can just pull those out and arrange them right on the card and decide if I like it before I actually have to go through cutting them all. I can really have time to rearrange things and try things out as I design the cards. I am now adding some of the color Cantaloupe to the tips of the leaves, and I am using a small finger sponge applicator tool to do that. It just gives me a little bit more ability to just get the tips of the leaves and not get all of the leaf when I do that. And I like that touch of yellow just to tie into the yellow of the dress. Another thing that's fun about this card that gives it a whimsical look is having the pink sky. So I wanted something pink to tie into the dress or to tie into that pillow that the little girl is holding. And so I thought, well, why not the sky? And by adding a green hill and greenery to the background, it's okay. You still understand that she's standing on a hill and it's just a really fun, whimsical sky. It just gives you more options for the colors that you can use for your image and for your background. They don't always have to be a blue sky. Now this is this really happy Illuminate die cut, and I thought it just, I don't know, the way that she's smiling, I just felt like it matched up with the happiness of that image. And I'm using that same cantaloupe color just to put some color right onto the center of those. And you will see when I assemble the card, I did layer some of these together. That might make more sense in a minute. Now I felt like that hill just needed a little bit more interest, so I'm going to use our mosaic pattern stamp on that. And because I didn't have any room to put the magnets right there on the stamp, I just put a little double-sided tape behind it and then put it into my Misty Stamp Positioning tool, just lining up where I want that pattern to be on the hill. And I'm going to ink that with the Northern Pine ink. So that was that same ink I used around the outer edges of the hill. And this gives a great tone-on-tone pattern to that hill. It's just a very handy stamp to have in your stash if your card just needs something else. To add some piercing, I'm using a Tim Holtz ruler on like a sponge piercing mat and a thumbtack just to add that piercing. So I did that all around the right and left hand and top side of the card, and I'm ready to assemble. I thought I had the camera rolling when I put down that hill, but I'm so sorry I did not. But I put that down using dimensional foam squares, and I also did that with the leaves dies, and I'm adding these flowers back behind her, trimming off the excess stems. And then here's where I'm going to layer more right on top. So once I get my glue working, I will go ahead and I just trimmed the very top of the flowers off, and I'm layering them slightly offset on the top for a little extra dimension. And the yellow on the center of those flowers and the yellow of her dress really create a visual triangle, which keeps the design balanced. This little love sentiment was just trimmed from the creative die called Triple Love. And I almost forgot, but thankfully I remembered before I glued her down. I am taking a memento marker in the color of Tuxedo Black and just going around the outer perimeter of that fussy cut image, also adding a little vintage photo distress ink, and that hides any imperfections in the trimming that I did. Now she's finally ready to go on the card. So for the upper portion of her body, I will use foam squares, and then for the areas of her, I think it's just that one little foot down at the bottom, that will get some liquid adhesive. Peel up the backing there, and I can apply her to the scene. And then this panel is ready to be added to a note card. And here's a look at that finished card. I thank you so much for watching today. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also connect with Penny Black on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, our blog, our website, and shop our online store. And I've linked to all of those for you down in the YouTube description box below. And if you stay tuned, here at the end of the video are the complete supplies used in making this card.